I'm Adam from the Army Painter. Today we're going to be showing you how to paint green armor. While the techniques that we're going to be using today are going to show you how to paint power armor, which would be great for something like salamanders or your dark angels, you could apply the same techniques to something like maybe your household knights from Parabellum's Conquest. Just follow along and you'll have the right keys to painting up simple green armor. Let's check out the paints that we're going to use in today's tutorial. We're going to start off with color primer green skin. We're going to have green skin on hand to cover up any mistakes, and we'll highlight up with Goblin Green and Scaly Hide and green tone, of course, for our wash. Over a decade ago, we produced these handy painting guides to showcase the Army Painter method. We're going to follow along and use some of these techniques today. If it's your goal to paint an entire army and you want to save loads of time, our color primer sprays are the first step to do just that. Why? Because they're a 2-in-1 primer and base coat. As always, give that can a good shake. You're going to spray at a distance of no greater than 20 centimeters. And when you're finished, turn the can upside down and spray until pigment stops coming out of the nozzle to keep it clean. After priming the model, we're going to let it dry, and then we're going to go right to applying a wash. This time we're going to be using Quickshade green tone, but you could also use something like Quickshade dark tone for this model. All really depends on how much you want to darken up the model. You can see that I've already began applying the wash to the model. You're just going to take Quickshade green tone right out of the bottle. I've applied it to my wet palette, and with a regiment brush, I'm going to apply this wash all over the model. You can see on screen that just by that simple application of the wash, you're picking out the details, you're adding contrast and shading. Careful not to allow the wash to pool up too much on the flatter portions of the model. If it does, while it's still wet and workable, just take your brush and wick it away and work that pigment into the recesses on the model. After it's had time to dry, if you maybe overpainted or if the Quickshade wash tended to pool up too much, if you missed any areas on the model, you can clean those areas up. That's part of the beauty of our color primer and war paint system. They are 100% match in pigment. So once you've primed it with green skin, you can go back with green skin war paint to clean up those areas. Now I'm applying my first highlight. I call this a chunky highlight with Goblin Green. This is a great color for that first highlight on green skin. I'm just finding all of the areas and edges on the model, and I'm tracing along this chunky highlight of Goblin Green to those areas. Very careful and patient. You want to be very patient here, as you're just going to find the areas. You don't want to miss any of the areas on the model where light would reflect. I'm using a character brush for this highlight, and I'm just finding those areas, like I said, where light would reflect on the model, all of the uppermost edges, like here on top of the boots of this model. I'm just going to continue drawing in this highlight. In some areas, you can take the edge of your brush. We'll show you that in a minute here, but in most of the areas on this model, like these panels, you're just going to have to trace and pull that highlight yourself. And here we are. I'm going to show you how to trace that paint on the shoulder pad. We have a nice hard edge here. I have nice thinned down Goblin Green paint on my brush, and I'm just taking the edge of the brush and I'm tracing the paint along the edge of the model. This is highlighting on easy mode. I always say that the face is the first place that somebody looks at when they focus in on your model. So this is where you really want to be patient and pick out all of those details, nice clean details around the lenses on this model, the brow of the eye, and the ridge of this helmet. Chances are when you're playing a game, you're going to see the back of your models more than your opponent does. So for your own sake, you want to make sure that you do a nice job highlighting the rear end of the model, the back of the backpack, this back panel right here on the hip as well. With our first chunky highlight complete, we're going to the wet palette here, and I'm going to thin it down. Our war paints are 100% water-based, and they thin down perfectly with just some clean water. Now I'm going to take this highlight and this Scaly Hide, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the uppermost areas that we previously highlighted, and I'm going to trace our scaly skin in the middle of it, but I'm only going to focus on the topmost ridges and areas on the model. This is where the light would reflect the most as we're painting up this green armored model. Like here on the top of the kneecaps, I'm just going to find the top portion, draw it inside of our initial highlight, and pull that highlight down. This is where having thin down paints really helps you out, because once you thin down those paints, you have much more control over the paint. And if you do paint over any of the areas or paint a little bit outside the lines, you're able to wipe it away without messing up the paint job too much. So just keep looking around the model, find the areas that you think will reflect the light the most, and apply this scaly skin highlight. You can use a character brush here or a detail brush. I always say that using the largest brush that you can for any given job is best, because the more bristles you have on the brush, the more paint it will hold. So you don't need to keep going back to your palette, and the paint won't dry out on the brush. So I flip the model around, and on this back plate here, this hip plate here, I'm just going to take the edge of my brush and I'm going to just pull that highlight along the edges. This is highlighting on easy mode here. And I'm going to focus in on the corners here, because that's the corners of these models are the hardest edges, and that's where the light is going to reflect and bounce back the most. Carefully on the helmet, I'm just going to trace in that Scaly Hide on the uppermost ridges, right here on the mask, underneath the eyes, and of course the brow of his helmet. Again, just on these knee pads here, this is a perfect area to showcase this extreme highlight. I'm not painting all the way around the bottom of the kneecap. I'm just focusing on the top half of the kneecap to pull our Scaly Hide highlight. Moving on to the shoulder pad, this is a great area to showcase the edge highlighting method. There's two different techniques. I like to use the edge of the brush and just trace it along the hard edge. You can see right here, just pull that angle of the brush along the hard edge. I'm going to flip the model around, and with very thin down paint and a whole lot of patience, I'm just very carefully going to pull this highlight with the tip of my brush. When highlighting fingers, you just want to take a little dot of paint and find the little knuckles and the raised areas on this armor here, and then again, pull those highlights along the hard edges of the model. Once we're finished adding our Scaly Hide highlight to the rest of the model, our green armor is complete. These techniques can be applied to any green armor that you'd like to paint, whether they're salamanders or dark angels, or maybe even your Parabellum household knights. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed painting up this green power armored model. Remember that you can find all the paints used in today's tutorial at your friendly local game store, online from your favorite retailer such as Amazon, or direct from us at www.thearmypainter.com. If you'd like to share your hobby progress and maybe set some hobby goals, find our new group on Facebook, the Army Painter Hobby Brigade, where you can share your hobby goals, and we'll be there along with your favorite painters across the community to help you achieve them. Remember, the magic in miniature painting is that it can be as simple or as challenging as you'd like it to be, but with the right techniques, you're sure to achieve some great results. We'll see you next time.